run for your fucking lives, do not stop. He's screaming, run for your fucking lives, and the look, and when I saw how scared he was, I was like, oh my God, we're gonna die. I ducked, I hid, I got behind people, I jumped into dumpsters, and then people were screaming in the dumpster I was in, and I thought, you're gonna get us killed. And I jumped out of the dumpster because I wasn't going to stay in there with people who were screaming and they were going to come in and kill us there. And when I ran across the street was when the bullet went literally right by my head. It, like, the whistling sound of that bullet, and it moved my hair.
Holy shit.
And I remember thinking, like, they're everywhere, because I had thought if I got out, they were in there, and now suddenly I'm out.
And they're still...
And you still don't know where it's coming from. And there's bullets ricocheting off of the streets and hitting cars and hitting people, and you're out of the venue, and it's just like, oh my God, I thought there were truckloads of terrorists everywhere. I thought that no matter where I was running, I remember when the bullet went by my head, that was the worst moment for me, because that was when I was like, this is how I die.
Hello there, everybody. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Heather Sallan, who is a survivor of the largest mass shooting in United States history that happened in Las Vegas on October 1st in 2017. Today, we're going to go over her story during the shooting, her roadmap to recovery afterwards as a message for hope for other trauma victims, her experience with ketamine therapy, as she was a patient of Dr. Robert Watson, who I interviewed previously, and everything in her life and her opinions that have changed since the shooting. If you enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into the interview.
So my name is Heather Sallan, and I survived the Las Vegas Country Music Festival mass shooting. And how I'd introduce myself is I'm a survivor. I am an artist. I am a huge advocate for hope and healing. And I am really happy to be here talking to you.
Woo. You said you were feeling some weird things before the concert actually happened. Like you felt like you weren't supposed to be there, or that if you were there, something bad was going to happen. What do you mean?
Okay, so I think there's a lot to be said for like having an inner instinct, sort of like when the hair stands up on the back of your neck, or you sense that something's going to happen. And when my kids were young, I used to always talk about their guardian angels, and they'd say, Mom, how do we know if our guardian angels are there? And I said, when you feel that feeling in your hair standing up, it's like the angels are whispering, and listen. Yeah. And I'd rather have you be wrong and safe than to try to prove that, it's dumb and stay in a situation, because I feel like that things are at play that we're either paying attention to or we're not. And in the 2 weeks in particular leading up to the going to Las Vegas, I had a lot of things that were happening. The 2 weeks before, I owned a company that I've since shut down after the shooting called Boot Rocks. And when I was working with one of the women who worked in my office, she and I were talking, and I kept telling her for the weeks leading up to it, I feel like I'm not supposed to go to the show, and I don't know why. And I really had this strong sense that I just shouldn't go, and I didn't know why. But of course, I went. And I had a lot of like physical signs of things that were happening that are more, like for some people would think it's kind of out there, but for me, it was like, they're just signs, and I just wasn't listening to them. And then the weekend of the shooting, I was walking by the venue with the woman who was working with me, and she said, what are you looking at? And I said, I'm just looking to see if there's barriers around this. I said, I don't know why, but I feel like something could happen here. And then the second night, I was going through security, and I was a vendor at the shooting, so I had my bag out with all kinds of electronics and computers, and they just looked in, they go, okay, you're good to go. And I put my bag down, and I was like, looked at my friend, and I said, there could be bombs in here. Like somebody could go into the middle of that crowd. I said, I don't know why, but I feel like something could happen here. And so it was like this, I had this sense, and I was saying I felt like something could happen. And something happened.
Which is so interesting, because after my sister lived through her first terrorist attack, now she has those feelings of something bad could happen in this crowd, but not before. And so I could see very easily how before you get there, something might be off, something makes your hair stand, but 2 weeks? What was the 2 week thing? You said crows or something?
Yeah, okay, so I had an office that I had my office space in front, and I had my warehouse space in the back. And the woman who worked for me, one of the women, came to me and she said, Heather, you need to come outside. And so we went out to the back, and it was warehouse doors, and we were on a corner. And then there were warehouses across from me also on the corner. And when I walked out, there were hundreds of black crows lined up on the rooftop across and above us and next to us, hundreds of black crows. And she just looked at me because she's sort of a sign person.
Yeah.
She's like, this isn't good. And it was pretty creepy, and I was just like, okay. And then the next day, again, my office was in the front, and I had windows at the front part of my office. There was a fire station across the street, and I'm sitting in my office, and I look across, and lined up along the whole front of the fire station were black crows.
Black crows.
And they were sitting there for a good part of the day. So black crows, I was told, represent death. And in this situation, black crows represented death.
Hundreds
of black crows, which I'd never seen before. So it wasn't like, this happened all the time. This was a weird thing. So signs, I mean, everybody has an idea of what a sign is.
Yeah.
And I think intuitively we sense things that we just aren't listening to.
And that's so interesting because there's always a line of superstition and this is just crazy, odd coincidences, but then no, this set of events could be leading down this path. So it's very interesting when we pick up on it or not. So we're going through security, you get your bag looked at, you're like, there could be anything in here, you're just gonna let me go? Weird. You go through day 2 of the concert. What's it like before? Do you remember who you're watching? Do you remember like who you're with and if you're having
You mean
fun?
right before the shooting?
Right before, like you're in the concert, everything's normal-ish.
Here's what I remember. I remember that my feet felt like anvils, that I'd been on my feet for days, and my feet were just killing me. I remember I could not wait to get some nachos. And so I went and got nachos because I'd been waiting all weekend to get these like really unhealthy nachos. And so I got the nachos and I came back to my space and I set them down. And I remember I was talking to a woman who was trying on my product. And when I heard what I thought were fireworks, because Jason Aldean was playing. And so I remember like stopping what I was doing and I went, oh, fireworks are starting. And I took 5 steps over and was looking at the stage. And right when it dawned on me, I was just like, that's really weird there's no fireworks, is when everything started. And yeah.
So from that point, you forgot about your nachos.
My nachos got knocked off that chair. They like blew up because everybody just started running.
Yeah. And so at that point, do you remember how close you were to the stage, or you could just see the stage? And then from there, how do you remember it?
I remember like hearing like just machine gun fire, and it was so shocking. And I remember people, because I was back looking at the stage, but I wasn't like you didn't have to be in the front.
It's huge.
You could be anywhere and the bullets were there, just so we're clear on that. There wasn't a isolated area that you were at risk. It didn't matter where you were. And you couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And there was all these machine guns and people started dropping to the ground. People were screaming. People started running. And it was like this, it was like surreal. It's like everything just slowed down.
Almost like a dream.
It was like a dream, and everything slowed down. And I remember looking over, and there were people in my booth, and the girl that I was working with me, and she said that I looked at her, and she said the look on my face of terror, that she was like, oh my God. And I remember running to my booth, and I remember grabbing people, and I just started throwing them in my booth and just saying, you've got to hide, you've got to hide. And it was just, I had a boot bar in my booth, and people were jumping over it, and I was jumping over it, and we were all laying there, and it was just like nonstop.
Was it just like a wood bar?
It looked like it was wood, but they were plastic drawers, but I had these covers over it that looked like wood planks, so people thought it was wood. And it was freaking gnarly.
So a bullet could still go right through it.
Bullets could go in anywhere. That's the one thing I remember. Live Nation, people were running into the bathrooms in the plastic porta potties, and they were running through screaming, get out of here, you're not safe in here, right? Because they were plastic. And so there's that, when you think that the bullets, like I thought if I got out of the venue, that I was going to be safe, because I thought there must be 5 people in the venue with machine guns, because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like multiple people with machine guns. And so, my thought was, if I get out of here, I'm going to be safe. And so I remember, when I realized the machine gun fire wasn't stopping, and I realized that they were in there, I just said, we got to get out of here. And now I start pushing people out of my booth, saying, you've got to run, you've got to run. And so they opened the gate to the right of where my booth was, and people were just streaming out, and we were all trying to run and get out, and it was gnarly. I just can't even tell you. So I got out of the booth, out of the venue, and when I got out, there was a police car to the right-hand side, and I remember, because he was there every day on that street, and the look on his face, he was like, run for your fucking lives, do not stop. He's screaming, run for your fucking lives, and the look, and when I saw how scared he was, I was like, oh my God, we're gonna die. And then people were under his car, in his car.
I love how you were smiling when you said that.
Well, what are you gonna do? At this point, it's like, I didn't die.
Yeah.
How lucky am I? And so he said, remember this guy just screaming, run for your life, just run, don't stop running. And I ran across the street. And when I ran across the street was when the bullet went literally right by my head. It, the whistling sound of that bullet, and it moved my hair.
Holy shit.
And I remember thinking, they're everywhere, because I had thought if I got out, they were in there, and now suddenly I'm out.
And they're still.
And you still don't know where it's coming from. And there's bullets ricocheting off of the streets and hitting cars and hitting people, and you're out of the venue, and it's just like, oh my God, I thought there were truckloads of terrorists everywhere. I thought that no matter where I was running, I remember when the bullet went by my head, that was the worst moment for me, because that was when I was like, this is how I die. Oh my God, this is how I die. And I was alone, and I was running, and I was gonna die. And no matter where I was running, I knew I was running towards my imminent death. I just didn't know what it was gonna look like. But it was like everything got really slow. I moved out of my body, and I remember just thinking, I remember moving into crowds and trying to get lower than other people, because the survival instinct kicks in. And one of the things that I think I've talked a lot about is there were people who said to me, I would have helped people, I would have been a hero, and I'm just like, you have no idea what your survival instinct is going to do until you get there. And anybody who thinks, I would have thought I would have done a million things, but what I found is I ran like hell. I ducked, I hid, I got behind people, I jumped into dumpsters, and then people were screaming in the dumpster I was in, and I thought, you're going to get us killed. And I jumped out of the dumpster because I wasn't going to stay in there with people who were screaming, and they were going to come in and kill us there. It was like my survival instinct took over.
And so at this whole point, from hearing the first fireworks to jumping behind the booth to running out the gate to the dumpster, how do you have you had no perception of time. You don't know if this was maybe 30 seconds, 10 minutes. Do you have any gauge of how long this whole thing was?
No, as a matter of fact, time became super abstract, because everything slowed down. And you hear that when people get in car accidents, that everything slows down and they just start seeing everything happening. That's what happened with this. It was like when I was running, I felt like I was in a video game. And I was looking around, and it was just everything was super slow, and I could see what I was doing, but it was so unfathomable. And so I didn't have my phone on me, and I kept asking people to, I need to call my family. I need to call my family. Somebody please let me call my family, because I knew I was going to die, and I needed to tell them I loved them. And I called some woman gave me her phone, and we're running next to each other, and I'm trying to dial. And I'm trying to hold her phone and trying to remember a phone number. That was crazy. And I was able to finally get the phone number in. And my son, who was 17 at the time, answered the phone. And I said, there's something super serious happening, and you have to turn the TV on, which is insane. Turn the TV on and tell me what's going on, because there's so much in real time, right? And he's like, Mom, I can't find anything. I can't find anything. And he's like, are you okay? And then I knew I couldn't tell my son I was going to die. I couldn't do it. And so I said, I think I'm okay. And my son said, well, what's that noise? And I said, it's machine guns. And then the phone died. And it was somebody else's phone. And so this has to do with time. So then I kept running and running. And it took 2 hours before I called him again, because I had no idea. It could have been 2 minutes, it could have been 2 hours, it could have been 2 days. For literally months, I could not put time back into a construct that I understood.
Even after the shooting, just on your normal day, I think you said if someone asked you to go out for lunch in the morning, you just ignore it because you're like, lunch in a few hours? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'd get a text message. I remember I had friends that were just trying to get me out, and they would say, do you want to have lunch today? And I'd look at the phone and I just set it down because my brain couldn't understand even like what that meant. And it didn't have there was no space that made sense with that. And then if they came to my house and grabbed me, I'd go with them, but I couldn't think about what was going to happen. And one of the things that was really crazy was during the event, when the bullet went by my head, I moved out of my body. I literally moved out of my body. And
so almost looking down kind of, or?
Yeah, like I was moving ahead of myself and dragging myself behind is the only way I can explain it. I felt like I was running and I could see everything, but it was like I was seeing it all from like outside of me. And so, and they call it being dissociated. And because I dissociated so heavily during this event, I dissociated and had to work really hard with my counseling and therapy to learn, because my automatic thing is to move out of my body now, and I've had to learn how to pull myself back in. But the 9 days after the event, I went home. It happened on a Sunday. I flew home on Monday night. Then starting on Tuesday, every single day I did the same thing. I woke up and went to a 7:30 workout. I went home and I showered. I blow dried my hair. I got ready. I put on my makeup. I got dressed, and I decided what I could do. The next day I went to a 7:30 workout. I took a shower. I blow dried my hair. And the reason this is relevant is that I did this super routine, super systematic thing. And on day 9, I was blow drying my hair, and suddenly I came back into my body. And when I came back into my body, I remember looking up, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I went, oh my God, I'm dead, and I don't know it. And then because I had been doing everything so routine, I was like, have I been talking to people when I'm on the treadmill at the gym? Have I been talking to my family? Do I think I'm talking to them? And I started like crying, and I ran out to the living room, and I said to my son and my husband, I'm like, am I here? Am I dead? Am I a ghost? Am I actually here? And they were like, what the fuck? And so they were like, you're here. And I just started crying and so I got on a Facebook website. It was a survivor group that had started up from this. And I said, this happened to me. And all of these people said, oh my God, that happened to me. Oh my God, that happened to me. And so it was like, but that sense of not knowing if I was actually alive or if I was a ghost, pretty horrifying.
Yeah, wow. So after you're running away, at what point from running away from the venue do you have some comfort level of, there's no more bullets, it's stopped, I'm safe? Do you remember where you are when that happens? Or how do you get home after that? You take an Uber?
Okay, so I ended up on the runway. I was one of those people who ended up, I ran.
That's far.
I just kept running, and somebody kicked in an airport hangar door, and then I went through the door, and then somebody opened the door to the runway, and then I went out that door, and then I just started running north. And when I was running north on the runway was when I heard the bullets stopped, finally. So it was 11 minutes of machine gun fire. And so finally...
So you were able to make it from the venue to the airport in 11 minutes?
They're right next to each other.
Yeah.
It's just...
Still, like that's... Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. I ran fast and hard. So I'm running on the runway, and I remember the whole time thinking, I got to stay on the sides of these planes. I got to stay on the side of this. I got to stay on the side of this. That's the only thing I knew is I had to stay on this side of something.
And you had no military experience?
No, but like I say, your survival instinct is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And mine is really honed in. Like, I'm going to survive.
You have some experience now.
Yeah.
This too.
And so when the shooting stopped, I remember thinking, like being aware of it. And then everybody around me, because I didn't have a phone, their Twitter feeds started going off. And they said, active shooters all over Las Vegas.
Oh, God.
See, this is what, so the reason that happened is because all of these shot people are running into casinos, And then the people in the casinos and people are like, there's a shooter. And it just kept waving down the strip, apparently. I don't know because I wasn't there. But so for 2 more hours, I ended up at a private airplane terminal at the end of the runway, the Atlantic Airport terminal. And I remember when I was running in the door from the runway, there was a group of us. We all had our hands up because we were afraid we were going to get arrested because we were on the runway.
Oh.
Right? So here we are in a mass shooting trying to survive. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get arrested because I'm doing something wrong. And so when we went in there, they had barricaded the front doors. And so we were sitting in there and we were hiding under windows, hiding in cubbies, because we still thought for another 2 hours that people were going to come and that they were all over Las Vegas and we still thought we were going to die. And so it was like, it wasn't just a 11-minute event. It was a 2.5 hour event. And then, go ahead.
When did you guys get safety, when did you guys get told you can go and everything's okay?
Okay, so what they did with us, because we were in restricted space. Airports, by the way, you're ever in trouble, go to an airport. Yeah. They protect airports, right? The police are around the airports because they didn't know what was going on, so they protect airports.
Do you know if they shut any of the flights down?
Oh, they shut everything down.
Yeah.
The second the shooting started, they told all planes to defer because there was bullets in the air.
Yeah.
Right? And so they, maybe they knew where it was coming from, I don't know. But there were no airplanes on the runway when we were running. And then they, so after 2 hours, let's see what happened. Oh, so suddenly 4 buses show up, because there was probably about 200 of us in this terminal, maybe, I don't know. And these buses pull up on the runway side, and they told us all to get in. And we were looking at them like, why are we going to get in those buses?
Yeah, we're not
They're
trusting
like,
you.
we're bringing you to where you need to go. And of course, we're all like so shell-shocked that we're all like, okay. So we get on the buses and they drove us to the cell phone lot for the airport. And then they told us to get out. And so we all get off the buses and we said, well, what do we do now? And they said, call an Uber. And they shut the doors and they drove off. And we're all standing there like, we still don't even know if we're really safe.
Yeah.
And we're standing on the other side at a cell phone lot. And I was staying with a friend that was, she was working with me. And I, oddly enough, when I was running, we had lost each other. And I was running and I was between 2 airport terminals or hangars. And suddenly I heard somebody scream my name and I looked over and she was hiding behind a box on the other side of the fence, which, how weird is that? Yeah. And so I ran over to her because I thought she'd been shot. So I was super grateful she was there. And then she said, you have to call my husband and tell him I'm okay, my phone died. And so I'm just like, I don't have a, and somebody gave me a pen and my hands were so sweaty, I couldn't write on them. Oh, yeah. And so I ended up on my shorts, I wrote her husband's phone number in a pen. And then I said, we'll meet, wherever. But then after I ran is when everybody's Twitter feed started saying there were active shooters all over Las Vegas. So I kept calling her husband from other people's phones. But the weird thing, I kept calling her husband. I wasn't calling my family because I needed to say, have you heard from her? Is she okay? Is she okay? And then when I had that number, had I not have had that, I would have had a totally different night because I was able to call him and tell him to come to the cell phone lot. And like 9 people piled into my car. And he took us back to their house and then went back looking for his wife. And then she brought 11 people home with her. Damn. And we were all walking around this house, total strangers. And of the group that we were with, there was a group of women that were all there on a girls' trip. And the next morning they found out one of their friends had been killed. Shit. So it was, 58 people were killed and more than 800 people were shot or injured. And nobody talks about that. Wow. They're always like, oh my God, 58 people were. It was like, I remember standing in the airport terminal and there were people who were shot there. And I remember thinking, how are they here? And then I started grabbing people and I'm like, am I shot? Am I shot? Because I didn't know, because I couldn't understand how they were there. Yeah. So I didn't know if I'd been shot. And so it was like one of those, like adrenaline, the anvil feet that I had. Gone. Light as they became like super lightning streaks. They were not, my feet were not hurting. Yeah. Yeah.
So how long were those people at your house? Did everyone sleep over? Was everyone talking? Was everyone like, I need a drink? Like, what was the vibe in that?
Shell shocked. And the group that I was with, oddly enough, were from Reno. And the woman that was hiding, I was alone. And I was alone. And I was going through this, and I had nobody to talk to, and it was freaking horrifying. And there was a woman who was sitting by herself, and I looked at her, and I thought, I'm going to go and be with her. And so I went over to her, and she was like, looked like she was going into shock. And so I started talking to her, and I said, where are you from? And she said, I'm a school administrator, and I trained for this, and I wasn't able to handle this. And I said, nobody trained for what we just went through. And then I was just getting her to talk. It turned out she was the principal at Bishop Manogue High School, and my son went to Bishop Manogue. And so it was like her, and then her husband and her two friends showed up. And then we were like a pod, and I just told them, I can't be alone. I'm staying with you. And they came back to the house. And then all of us, though, were just what they went through and what they saw versus me. They saw people's heads be blown off in front of them. Yeah. One of them was running, and she was running, and she got hit by a person behind and was smacked down onto the ground. And the person had been shot and was dead on top of her. And she couldn't, like, get them off. And so, like, everybody's experience, mine was just 100% survival. Mine was just trying to freaking live. And by the way, never thinking I was going to live. So it wasn't like I was trying to survive it. I was just in survival mode. There are people who saw, like, people... I mean, I have friends who were shot. I have friends who... Natalie Grummet was shot through the face. She's had 14 surgeries now. So, I mean, there's just like, everybody has a different caliber, but what we all went through was just, I was so impacted by what I went through, and I didn't watch somebody's brain get blown out. I saw shot people. Getting on the airplane the next day, because you said this happened Sunday, and then Monday night you guys flew out? It happened on Sunday. Monday, because I left my purse, I left my phone, I left everything in the space, so I had nothing. So my husband ended up flying down to Vegas, and he handed me a plane ticket, and he handed me my passport at the security. And then I got on an airplane, and he stayed thinking he was going to get my stuff out of my booth. How did that go? That was crime scene. Well, I mean, you know, like where's the thought in that? Like, this is a massive crime scene, but they're going to let us go in there. They wouldn't. I had to go in 35 days later and go back and get my stuff. But after about, I think my husband was down there for 2 days, and I couldn't function. And so I'm like, you have to come home. Like, I literally couldn't function. You were just alone with your son? I was alone with my son, and I was such a mess. My brain was like, I couldn't think, I couldn't do things. I couldn't make food. My clothes couldn't match. Like, you see people who go through a tragic loss and they're wearing like pajamas in the store. I'm like, I understand that because I'm like, all I wanted was to be comfortable, and I just would terrible. You say you have this journey from victim to survivor to warrior. Okay. At what point do you feel like you're a victim, and then can you grow a little bit out of the experience to survivor to warrior? What's the path afterwards? Anybody who has something super dramatic or tragic or traumatic happen to them is a victim. There's no other way about it. You cannot have something super major and what it is like you live your life a certain way. And you know who you are, how you walk the planet, you know what you stand for, and then an event happens and suddenly none of it makes sense anymore. That's what happened to me, and that's what happens to a lot of victims. And when that happens, you are victimized. Your life is changed, and it's changed because something happened to you that you didn't choose. That's how I see it. Did you feel like you had no control anymore? I felt like what happened to me after what I went through was I felt like everything that I believed about the way the world operated, about my safety, about my security, about who I was, I believed that it was like somebody took curtains and opened a window, and now I saw what life really was. Now I saw, we live, like it or not, we live in the bubble that we're told, because it's super comfortable. We live in the reality that sort of fits how to keep us comfortable.
Yeah.
And-
Emotional reinforcement.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are the strongest country. We are the safest. We are protected. Nothing will happen to us. And if it does, it's from a foreign, you know what I'm saying? It's like sort of like terrorism's a big thing.
Yeah.
Well, we have all of this as domestic terrorism, and nobody calls it that.
Yeah.
So there's a language and a sequencing of how we're told that life is, and after what I went through, now I see everything for exactly what it is. And I'm not saying that in a way like it's good or bad. It's just what it is. I don't have a filter anymore. It's so much more comfortable living the way I lived before. But I don't get that back.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to figure out how to maneuver within what I see as the truth of how we really are living in the world right now. And so it's not a I'm not even angry about it because it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. And if people are still in the bubble, I hope you stay there forever.
It's much better
right?
there.
I don't feel like people need to see my truth or what I see as being the truth because it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's what it is, and so I just maneuver within that. And so what happened for me is when I was a victim, I was broken. I was broken by what happened to me. I was damaged. I couldn't really see the light, and I couldn't see any truth or hope outside of it. And then that wasn't really comfortable for me. I don't think it's comfortable for anybody, but some people can stay in that space for a really long time, and I couldn't. So what I did is I went into advocacy work, and I feel like once I started advocating for something, and for me it was survivors. So I started working with other survivors. I started a survivor support group here. I started trying to figure out the things that I couldn't handle that I had seen, how do I change it? How do I make it different?
And I imagine there's a huge cognitive shift when you go from identifying as a victim, this happened to me, I have no control, it's shit, which is all true, to then saying, I'm a survivor, this did, but then having this. Surviving is different than being a victim. So how would you talk about the difference?
To me, being a survivor is an action word, right? So like when you're a survivor, you finally can see what's happened to you, and then you kind of make some decisions for yourself that I'm going to do something about it. Now, for some people, it might just be meeting with another person, being able to talk to them one-to-one. It doesn't have to be these grand, amazing things. But as soon as you are able to move out of yourself and what I'm going to speak for me. As soon as I moved out of myself and what happened to me and being victimized by my experience and being able to step into more of a we and a collective, and there's something about this that now we have an understanding with each other that other people may not. And I found a space in that was really comfortable. And I think a survivor is somebody who's been through it, who's kind of gotten to the other side, and now they're just trying to, even if you don't really do something about it, at least you're within a community of people that you relate to. And by just relating to people on something like trauma, then you are doing something about it. When you are quiet and you are like dealing with it yourself, you are stuck.
So how'd you get into this advocacy work? Was it a Facebook group?
There's a woman who showed up, and she shows up all over the country at like mass shootings. And her name, her company is...
Pretty odd coincidence, she's always there. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah. Her daughter was killed in the, the Aurora movie theater shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so she and her husband basically got rid of everything, got an RV, and how they could move forward in their life was by trying to help people, and they had no idea that everything was going to become what we have going on now, right? I mean, it was Columbine, and then maybe there was another, then it was Pulse nightclub, right? And then it was, there were probably a few other here and there, but then from the Las Vegas shooting on, there was probably 6 mass shootings a day. They just aren't reported on, right? And they only report on the catastrophic ones or that would really get attention, but because I'm in the community, I get the information about what's going on. And I have to be really careful about what I get. I have to get about how I process that for healing. And this woman ended up showing up, and I think she was the first person who started talking to me about talking to people about, here's what you need to do. Here's how to take care of yourself. And so by taking care of myself, then I started creating sort of a clearing to be able to see that if I take care of myself, then maybe I can help other people, right? And so I started getting involved in different advocacy things. Like I say, I started a support group. I I got involved in trying to change gun laws.
Which we're definitely going to talk about in a second.
Okay. I got involved in sort of the gun violence prevention movement, and I ended up basically realizing, after doing all of this, there's people who can do that work really, really well. People who've lost somebody can do that work really, really well. People who are in something, I was getting re-victimized over and over and over and over by being in a fight for something that kept me in what I was trying to heal from.
Do you want to tell us about one of the experiences of you're trying to advocate and help people become survivors, but the people who you're talking with put you in that victim identification again?
Well, I mean, here I was in an NPR interview, and I got contacted, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I talked about, what I'd been through, and I talked about how damaged I actually was, and I was completely changed by what I went through. And then I talked about all the things that I've been doing to get better, and all the things I was doing to heal. And what I didn't understand was that wasn't the spin of their story, and that when the story came out, I started having people contact me. Hey, just saw the NPR interview. Just wanted to check on you. And then like 3 minutes later, I get another message, hey, just wanted to see how you're doing. Check out. And these are people from my past life, people from around the country, really intelligent people. And they're reaching out to me, checking on me, but they're not my usual people, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm like, and then I get the message from somebody else who was in the movement that I was and said, the NPR video interview came out. Have you heard it yet? With like 3 question marks. And I just went, oh my God. They depicted me as broken, damaged. They depicted me as so broken. And there was nothing about my healing and nothing about where I'd gone, what I'd done to heal. And I remember like feeling, I was devastated. And then I woke up the next day and I realized everything that I said was what happened to me. And as damaged and as broken as I was my truth. And that my fault for not saying, where are you going with this? What is the spin of your story? Because had I have known that it was about being a victim and not about how to heal, I would have declined the interview. And I've learned a lot from that. And then I also realized it's like they're my words. They didn't change my words. They just used it, all of the stuff they needed, and got rid of the things that would have made me feel better or stronger.
Or to show an outlet for other people who went through it, this is the way to heal.
This is the way to heal.
Survivor. Yeah.
So through time, what I really found for me was I'm super good in the healing. I'm great in the hope and healing aspect of this journey. And again, through the Woman with Survivors Empowered, she started a mindfulness program for mass shooting survivors. And I've been a part of a case study through UCSD for mindfulness, tracking 44 survivors around the country who've been in mass shootings. And we all have a mindfulness practice, and we've all done courses together. And, just trying to heal through all the different modalities, like healthy modalities. And so I've been lucky because I've been a part of those. And I'm actually going to a gun violence survivor retreat in Mexico at the end of this month, where I'm going to be helping be a part of the hope and healing for these people.
And this is exactly why I was introduced to you. Is from Dr. Robert Watson, who I interviewed him. He's Reno's first ketamine clinic owner. You were one of his patients.
I am.
How long after the shooting until you figured out, wait, there's this awesome ketamine therapy that I could go try, and what was your journey like before, during, and then since? Okay,
so I had been, doing regular therapy, EMDR therapy, since 3 weeks after the shooting. I went to yoga teacher training to learn like peace within my soul, but I never did yoga. That's how desperate I was. I'm in meditation. I have a really strong meditation practice. I am in like a lot of type of support systems and groups to talk about healing. I was doing every single thing, and everything I did helped me. I mean, I have to tell you, everything I did helped me. But I lived with pervasive PTSD. And so what ended up happening for me was, it didn't matter how healed I was, and I was way better than I was always managing it. which was absolutely exhausting.
It's like how alcoholics always say, I'm still an alcoholic even though I've been 20 years sober.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so like if you talk to somebody who has PTSD, and again, when I came back, I had 3 friends of mine who were in the military who showed up to me, and they just said, you're going to be okay, we got you. And I remember looking at all of them saying, I don't understand why you're talking to me. And then they said, we understand what you just went through. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, these, and I thought no one can understand. And then these men showed up, and I realized I had another community that I could talk to, right? And so what I have learned about like trauma and the manifestation of trauma and healing from trauma, and this is, I think, where I've come from. First, I was, talking about gun violence. And, the truth of the matter is traumatic events are traumatic events. And it isn't what happens to us in life. It's what we're left with because of what happened to us in our lives. And that's where I focus my energy at this point. I mean, I can talk about, trying to make things be different in certain aspects, but in truth, it may not be. And so I'm now going to just fight for that feeling inside of me that I've been able to heal, and I'll get to ketamine, and move that conversation into my world, because that's productive for me. I actually feel like I can do something with that. And it doesn't matter if you're in a mass shooting. It doesn't matter if you were violently, assaulted, if you were raped. You're left with the same insides as I was left with. And if I've been able to heal from what I've been able to, then I feel like that's more the more productive journey for me. And so with Dr. So I've done all these things, and my best friend ran a brain science clinic in Seattle, and she kept talking to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
What?
She kept talking about ketamine treatment, and I'm like, I'm not doing ketamine. I'm not like that,
Like,
And
it's weird, it's dumb, it's this hippy dippy shit.
I pretty much got sober when I was 20.
Yeah. Before you
Pretty
could drink.
much. No, I'm still sober. Like,
Or, I mean, before you could legally drink.
yeah, well, yeah, because I got violently jumped and beaten, physically unrecognizable by a total stranger when I was 20. I've had a lot of crazy events happen to me.
Yeah.
And so I realized I couldn't protect myself when I drank and I was partying. So I quit everything when I was 20, and it's always been a big part of who I am, right? I am clean, I am sober, I am la la la, and which is really a big part of who I am. Super proud of it. But when it came to doing ketamine treatment, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, because I'm going to move my way through things like I move my way through everything because I've had to. And so she said, I'm going to send you studies on PTSD. And then she would send me something. And then 2 months later, she'd send me another study. And she kept bringing it up for about 2.5 years. And I kept on saying, no. Well, after trying to manage this now, at this point for about 4 years, it was exhausting. Everything in my life was exhausting trying to do it. And no one around me knew how impacted I was anymore, but I lived with this could happen, this could happen, this could happen.
Every situation, every big crowd you go into, it's always like alarms going off in your head.
Only went to one grocery store because I knew where everything was in the aisle, and I knew where every exit was.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go to other grocery stores. My world became small. My everything became very limited and controlled because I had to know that wherever I went, when something was going to happen, not if, that I was going to be okay. And so when after going to yoga teacher training, I came back and I started having that spin of PTSD just wrap inside of me and just start pulling again. And I finally just said, I'm going to go. So I went with my husband to Dr. Watson's ketamine clinic. And he and I talked, and I said, how do I know if I have pervasive, untreatable PTSD? And he said, well, tell me about yourself. So I started telling him what a day in my life was like, and the management and what happens when I get triggered. And as I'm talking to him, I started sobbing. I'm like, I am so tired. It's so much work. It's so exhausting to be me. And he goes, you qualify, right? And so he just said, look, this, and he gave me, you interviewed him.
Yeah.
He gave me the down low about what it could do for me. And so I walked out with my husband and I said, because I didn't trust my judgment. And not because I was looking for something, it's because I wanted anything to fix me at this point. And so I would just go right on because I just wanted to be fixed. And so he said, I said, what do you think? And he said, sounds like you're going to do 5 drug trips. And I went, oh. And he goes, but it sounds like it could help you, and I think you should consider it.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I went on Thursday, and the very first day I did it, my life changed. I mean, not I had, a little bit of a difference. I immediately got my life back.
And how was that? You went in the first day. We understand the setup at the clinic. It's through an IV. You're in this very comfortable situation. What do you experience your first treatment and then coming away afterwards? How do you feel so changed?
Okay, so they told me when I went there, because I was nervous. I said, what's this going to be? And you put on meditation music, you put on eye coverings. So really, you are internally within yourself. You're not like engaging with the world around you at all. You are literally working on you and your thoughts and your feelings when you're in there. And so when she told me, the nurse that was there, she said, my recommendation to you is to trust the process. And to trust the process and figure out what you want to get from this and just put that out there. And so for me, I wanted to be not afraid anymore.
I mean, that's the biggest thing Dr. Bob said, why a party experience with a psychedelic is never going to have the same clinical aspect, because the intention is to party, have a good time, not what do I need to work on myself and be guided through it. So how did it go from there?
So I just said, out loud, I said, I just don't want to be afraid all the time anymore. And I mean, when I would talk about how afraid I was all the time, and I was never like that before the shooting, I was fearless. I mean, I've traveled in Europe by myself. I've lived in, I was fearless. And I just didn't want to be afraid anymore. And then when I was doing it, I had all of these incredible like insights. Like I could see the shooting. I could see it from above. I could see the hotel, and I could see all the people. And then it was like this. Then there was just this separation, and just my voice was saying, "It's just something that happened. It's just something that happened." So prior to doing ketamine, everything about who I was defined by what I just gone through. I used to laugh before that happened. I used to be funnier before that happened. I used to be fearless before that happened. Everything always boomeranged back to when my life changed that day, right? And so what ketamine did for me was it took the event that happened and it just made it a thing that happened, and it separated all of the story I've been telling about who I am since then. It's like it just sort of cleared that way, and now it's like I can see it all. I'm not separated from what happened, but what physically used to happen inside of my body when I would think about it isn't there anymore, because trauma stays in your cells, and when it activates, you feel it like it's happening again.
It's a reflex. It's literally.
It is literally, and so I no longer have that. I have not been triggered since I've done it. I have not been. I had anxiety, like I had electric currents running through my body every single day, and the day after I did ketamine treatment, I had no anxiety, and I didn't even know you could live like that.
And so the whole treatment, we know it's dissociative. We have no idea of time, so I'm not going to ask how long do you feel like you were under it. But then as soon as you were done and you pulled the blindfold off and you were talking to Dr. Bob or the nurse afterwards, what was the conversation like in the rest of that day?
I said to the nurse, I saw what I went through. And she said, that's not uncommon. And I said, do people cry after they do this? And she said, sometimes. And I just started sobbing. And I was sobbing because of this total release that I had.
It's almost like joy.
Yeah, it was just like this, it was relief, right? But I didn't really, I can't say. So then from the time you do it, the experience lasts for 45 minutes. So from the time you show up to the time you leave and somebody has to drive you home, it's 1 hour. 2 hours later, I was totally fine to do anything I needed in the day. I could go drive my car, I could go to work, I could do whatever it is I needed to do. So it's not like this, 7-hour impactful
like
thing, right? Right.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I loved how quick it was in. I loved how quick it moved out of my body. And then the next morning, I was having coffee with my husband, and I looked at him and I said, is this how you feel every day? And he looked at me and he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, like, no anxiety in your body. Is this how you feel every day of your life? And he said, yeah. And I started sobbing because I can't recall, because again, I got jumped and beaten when I was 20. I have been hypervigilant my whole life, but I didn't know until I did ketamine. And so again, I want to say, like, all the therapy I did, all of the mindfulness, all of these things, what it is my brain understood it all. And it understood when I did therapy and I got a lot of help, but it never got me all the way there, right? It just was like, I understood it and I was going to keep working on it, but I never got the total relief. But I understood it. And so when I did ketamine, it was like all of the things I'd done, it's like there were columns in my brain of all these things that I understood, and it's like ketamine just dropped into the columns, and it all went, oh, Okay.
Yeah.
So I do think like you can do ketamine treatment and get a relief, but I take the process like super seriously, that my meditation practice had to align with what it is that I was healing from. And I had to, once those neural pathways were opened up, it was my responsibility to keep them open.
Yeah,
And
and just make them stronger.
I take that super seriously. Like I take, not seriously, I take that responsibility. I wanted to heal, and so it's my job to stay healed.
There we go. And that's moving from victim of no control to survivor to now warrior. It's my responsibility to stay
Yes.
healed and be strong.
And to be in that conversation at all times. And so like, again, as a sober person, there was like a lot of like, first I was like, you know, I'll hold this to me because I don't want to hear what other people have to say. And then suddenly I thought, too, I've gotten so much help and I've done exactly what I needed to do. I'm not doing ketamine and like going out to frickin' Burning Man, right? I'm doing it clinically the way that it says, and it's healed me. And I'm not going to keep that to myself. If there's other trauma out there, I won't talk about it at like a group level about anything, but anybody who walks up to me before, after, or during, I'll sit and have coffee with anybody because I've healed from trauma. I do not have PTSD. I do not have PTSD anymore. And for people who have PTSD, you just think they say this is your new normal and you go with it because there is no other way around that. Yeah. And I no longer have PTSD. I did my first treatment 2.5 years ago.
Did you do the other 4 treatments?
Oh, I did all of them.
Okay.
And I would have gone about every 4 months. I do a boost.
There we go.
Because sometimes I can just feel that irrational fear start to arrive. Because that's what PTSD is there's an irrational fear. And it isn't like when I left my house every day, this is sort of the nutshell. I left my house every day knowing something was going to happen. I just didn't know where it was going to be or what it was going to look like, but I was ready. Now I leave my house and I have the same odds you do that something's going to happen. The world's a little jiggy, shit's going down, but now it's like the chances are it probably isn't going to happen. I no longer live my life waiting for something really terrible to happen. And that you talk about creating a different setting in your ecosystem. And I mean, ketamine treatment literally, immediately gave me my life back.
So Dr. Bob is the doctor who knows everything about it, and if you want to see more about ketamine specifically, go watch that interview. But in terms of how you were able to deal with being sober but yet taking this drug, which is the big criticism, it's a party drug, but it's not when it's in a clinical setting. So how did you come to terms with that? What conversation was it to say, you know, it's not me not being sober anymore. It's like if I went to a doctor and got any other kind of medication. Or how did you wrestle with that?
I have a great distinction. When you're not being sober is when you're using something to take you out of who you are. When you're sober, I did ketamine to bring me back to be whole and present in my life every day as I am. I am not interested in ever doing that and walking out the door and engaging with people and seeing how that goes. Like, matter of fact, if I never did ketamine again the rest of my life, I would be cool.
Yeah.
If I have to do it again, I am so neutral around. But what I do know is you have people who take Prozac every day. You have people who go into, like, I'm not going to go and have surgery and not do anesthesia because I'm sober.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm not going to, if I've had surgery and I've had to take pain pills as prescribed, I'm going to take the pain pills because you don't chase pain. So there's no difference between that and what I did. And the truth of it is it took me 4 years to try to get mentally in a place to just be surviving my life. And then by doing ketamine, I was completely given back my life. Why would anybody not look at that as an opportunity?
And I'd even imagine a lot of research is showing that it could help with alcoholism and smoking cessation. What would you say to anyone who's currently a recovering addict of any kind, who is on the fence or is an addict and is looking for a way out? I mean, you're not a doctor, but would you recommend, hey, maybe try it, look into it a little more, talk to your local ketamine clinic? I
think what it does is it releases trauma from us. And so I believe now that I have gone through, one of the things that I can say is I see trauma in other people. It's like there's a line from my heart to other people's hearts that, remember the window that opened?
Yeah.
Right? And so now that window didn't just show me what's really out there, it showed me people that before I'd be like, I don't understand why they can't figure this out. Right?
Yeah.
Now I go, oh my God, something serious happened to them, and no, they're not talking about it, and they don't even know they live with unresolved trauma. So I'm the conversationalist about unresolved trauma. And I just am like, because you can be relieved from it, but a lot of people live with it and they don't know. And I think a lot of people who are sober have a lot of trauma. And so for me, it's like, as long as there are modalities that exist and you are doing them with doctors in clinical settings and you're doing it the way it's supposed to be done and you're doing it because you're trying to heal, I couldn't begin to judge that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is a completely other way to do it. And frankly, I'm not judging that, but you're talking about people who are sober.
Yeah.
Like, that isn't the way to do this. But to heal and get your life back, and I can see where I think a lot of people stay in addiction because they have this unresolved trauma that they don't know what to do with. Because what happens when you get triggered
What do you do behaviorally? What are the consequences afterwards? You smoke a joint, take a drink, you feel better, that goes away, now you're more likely to do it.
Well, if you get triggered, and I give this example of, my triggers are really obvious, right? They're loud popping noises. I've been at galas and everybody starts popping the balloons and I am in a gown running as fast as I can for the door, like not able to breathe, crying, tripping over things, right? That's my problem. That's what I had to deal with. But
this doesn't happen anymore.
No. Nope. And
Do you want to say it one more time for the camera?
that does not happen anymore. I mean, I have not been triggered. I went twice now. I've done fireworks at Squaw Valley. Fireworks for me, even the thought of going to fireworks used to make me physically sick because one, they sound like the cadence of fireworks, especially the grand finale.
Yeah.
The cadence of the grand finale sounds exactly like what the bullets we went through. And not just that, but when I walked out, I thought it was fireworks. It wasn't fireworks. So now when I'm looking at fireworks, my brain says, yeah, but you thought it was fireworks before. It wasn't. So I couldn't separate those two things at all. And now I've gone to fireworks twice in the last year. Fine. I went to Squaw Valley had like EDM and music. I was there in a crowd with music and fireworks. Fine. I couldn't have even considered doing that. It wasn't even an option. And now it's like I feel like suddenly I can just do the things. I can choose. There's things I won't do because I don't want to. But it's not because I can't, where before I couldn't. And that's I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing. So I think that there's a distinction of how to do it so that you're doing it to actually be in your life, and then there's a distinction of doing it to be out of your life.
So we've gone over going into the shooting, the trauma afterwards, the healing, the ketamine therapy. Now, is there anything else along those lines of the conversation that you want to sum up or anything cool that you want to add to it before we go on to how your opinions on guns and other things you've been an activist for, gun laws, everything like that has changed, gun violence? Before we move on to that, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to say that when you know that something like this exists, and now you do, because Dr. Watson has been on this and I'm talking about it, then suffering becomes a choice. And so I feel like if there's a way to, like, I've never taken antidepressants. I don't have depression. That's one thing, thank God I don't have it. Anxiety through the roof. But I didn't take anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that from what I understand with antidepressants, it's a slow, evolving change in your ecosystem that you have to do. Ketamine is an instantaneous writing of your brain. And, so if I went from having PTSD on Monday and I did not have it on Tuesday and I've never had it again and that exists and I'm telling you that exists, then why am I the exception? Yeah. Right? There's been so many people who've gotten help, and all I can say is if this help exists, then just, people are like, I can't afford it. It's like, you can't afford not to.
Yeah.
You can't afford not to. The amount of money I've spent on therapy in the last 6 years. Oh, by the way, my therapist let me go after doing ketamine treatment.
Damn.
I never thought I wasn't going to be in therapy the rest of my life. Within 2 months of doing ketamine treatment, she was like, you are good.
For those who haven't seen Dr. Bob's interview, he's had hundreds of clients, and he estimates his success rate in the 90%. That people go in for 5 treatment sessions. They have these working sessions every couple months. But it's not like an antidepressant where you're on it for life, and half of the people say it never works, and you've got this cocktail of all of this, and Instant.
Instant. And so it's like, make the choice. It's like sign up for yourself. And, the other thing is trying to move yourself out of the way. Like living in the things that happen to us don't have to define the rest of your life, even though it feels like that's what you know about yourself. You don't lose yourself. You just lose that story of yourself to become the best version. And so I just feel like it's, if it exists and you're not doing it, you're choosing to be uncomfortable and don't do that anymore.
No, you have the choice. We're not going to say you're stupid for not making the choice. We want to encourage you to make the choice so the choice becomes easier. So,
okay.
Please.
And Dr. Watson, I've been doing bi-monthly, every 3 months. We would do them more often if people wanted to do it, but I've been doing Ketamine Curious Conversations where people can come in. It's an hour conversation in the evening. We're going to be doing one in June, and that way I tell people, show up. Anything that would keep you from doing it or not doing it, come and ask. Because Dr. Watson's there, I'm sharing my experience. Bring your spouse who thinks you're going to get addicted and they have their concerns. Whoever would tell you you shouldn't do that because this is what I think about it, have them show up so they can ask their questions. And it's just something I do as a service for him. I don't make money by doing it. I do it because my life has changed and it's my pay it forward.
And I think it's important to note, Dr. Bob is not a regular doctor, because if he was, he would be prescribing antidepressants and making shit tons of money from it.
Right.
But he actually took a pay reduction to start his ketamine clinic, makes less than he is. There's no his biggest advice is focus on diet and exercise, get away from stress. Like, this is the good doctor.
He's amazing. He is amazing. He is, yeah, I'm super grateful.
Cool.
All right, now let's go to the...
So now we're going to talk about guns because, like you said, you were in this interview. They wanted to focus on your victimhood and probably use that for a narrative to say we should ban these guns or probably some kind of gun agenda. So before we get into that, how was your childhood with guns? Growing up with guns, did you have guns? Did you ever shoot guns? Did you go hunting? Did you like them, hate them?
Super important, and thank you for starting with that.
Yes.
Because then maybe people will hear me who listen to this. I grew up in Alaska. I grew up in a hunting family. We had hunting rifles. We had gun safes. My son hunts. My husband hunts. We have a gun safe in my house, but it's for hunting, which is totally fine.
Just hunting.
Just hunting. We're not shooters. They'll go target shooting before hunting season.
Fun, yeah.
But I grew up with guns. There's that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so after the shooting, how was your opinion on, or I guess before the shooting, what was your opinion on gun ownership and I guess gun laws in general? Okay,
before the shooting, I just thought that, guns were guns and I didn't have any real opinion about it. I felt like, because it hadn't impacted my life, right? And my issue isn't about guns and it isn't about gun ownership. It's about the types of guns that everybody has incredible access to. That's my personal comment, but it's not about guns.
So your personal comment would be, I'm not going to try to put words in your mouth, but you have the opinion on it, but in your activist, I don't want to say era, but when you were being an activist, how much of it was focused towards guns, either education, rights, harm reduction? What's the whole story with it?
I have a thing, I think assault weapons are unnecessary.
Do you think they should be banned and taken away, or how? So the opinion is they're unnecessary, but then if you had to make a vote or anything like that.
Well, I'm actually not going to make a statement about that because it doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're not going to go away.
Okay.
We have more guns in this country than
Yeah, I've got more guns than siblings.
Right. So it's like what I think about it doesn't really matter. It's not overly relevant, and it doesn't serve me to make a stand against one thing or another. My feeling, because I was in a mass shooting and I was on the receiving end of automatic machine gun fire for 11 minutes, changes my feeling about the destruction of this. That is because of my experience. So what I try to speak to is what I went through because of it versus my opinion about it.
Because your main focus isn't about we should try to make this never happen again, and we gotta ban these guns. It's shit happens. Let's figure out a way to not be victims but become warriors. Would you say that's
Well,
true?
no. I think that I'm in the fight that I feel like I can win.
Okay.
And the fight that I feel like I can win is trying to, like, guns aren't going to go away. And I'm not saying that I want guns to go away. Be clear.
Okay.
I have an issue with certain types of guns, period. But they're not going to go away either. And so if I'm not going to waste my lifeblood, time, and energy fighting a battle that, because of the existence of these types of guns, and it is these types of guns, we have mass shootings and mass casualty events that are happening over and over and over and over. And so what I realized is I'm going to go to those people. I'm going to help those communities. I'm going to try to help those people heal, because at least I know I can do that with what's happened to me.
We don't want to talk about opinions. It doesn't really matter. But have you had someone, I'm imagining in the NPR interview, maybe, but have you had times where people get mad at you that you're not, let's ban guns, and really vocal about it?
Yeah. So what happens with me is I don't actually talk about my opinion on guns. You asked me about coming from where I'm from, that I grew up with guns, that I have guns in my house. But I want to be super clear that I do not talk about my opinion. I talk that this happened to me. I was in a mass shooting, that I was on the receiving end of machine gun fire. I talk about that. And when I say that, people automatically assume that I am a gun-grabbing liberal nut. and they have this whole dialogue about how they decide who I am, when all I did was say I was in a mass shooting. And they've been very hostile, very vocal, in my face, somewhat threatening. And I literally am looking at them like, I was just in a mass shooting. Like, that's all the conversation I've had about this. And that is your response to me? It's horrifying. And it's scary. It's been really scary. And that's the other reason I just decided I get really, that used to trigger me. Like, I would just be like, these people, I feel like they could get so mad that somebody would shoot me.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's the whole idea about my book, Behaving as Us. This quick ability, I guess, it's good because it's categorization, it's survival, it's all these things that we've been bred to do for hundreds of thousands of years. But in a setting like this, where you just want to listen to someone recount their experience, but you hear, maybe she doesn't like guns, instantly you roll down this cartwheel of effects of, she's this, and now you stop looking at her as a person, you as a person, and look at her as some imaginary figure for this group that you see yourself as against, and therefore everything is bad and all of this stuff. So what other times in your life has that happened, where you're talking about your experience, but then someone just hears it and is like, boom, assumes the world?
I was on a panel at Reno High, and they were doing, it was after the Vegas shooting and after, I want to say it might have been after the Parkland, I'm not sure. I feel like there was another shooting after mine. Texas. There was one in Texas. And
There was, just which one was it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, which one was that? So we were on a panel. We had city council members. We had a guy who owned a gun store. We had, we had a guy whose daughter had been raped by somebody at UNR campus, and had she had her been allowed to have her concealed carry on her at the campus. So it was that debate about whether you could have guns on campus. You had me, who was in a mass shooting, and you had people with gun violence, like Brady campaign, right? So you had people who were working for changing gun laws. So this whole panel, when I sat down, I had, I actually believe I might have had a Brady button on. I don't think there was a Brady person there, but I had a Brady button on. And so when I sat down, the guy whose daughter had been raped on the campus and wasn't allowed to have her gun, and then I had the gun owner guy to the right of me. And they both, like the guy whose daughter goes, yeah, well, he just started going at me. And he didn't know anything about me, right? He didn't know, he just saw that I had a Brady. And it was like, it was an innocuous saying. It wasn't a Brady saying, but it was a saying that they had. And he started telling me, just going off on me, and this happened to my daughter, and if this had happened, if she could have had her gun, and I just looked at him, and I'm like, okay. And then, so when I get up, the guy from the guy who owns the gun store, he got up and he started talking about, we all introduced who we were, and I said that I was a survivor and that I was in the mass shooting and that I ran for my life, and I talked about the survival instinct and how terrifying it was. This guy gets up and said, I had a lot of friends who were there, and if they had, if he would have been there, he would have saved people. And that he would have been a hero. He wouldn't have run like this girl back here who was,
said that?
And he was like started doing all this stuff with me. And then basically I got up and I said, I'm a 50-year-old mom. So sorry for running for my life from bullets.
Yeah, what the
and
fuck?
I just looked at him and I said, I don't even understand like how you're making me look like this. And I said, and in truth, I won because I lived. I'd run again, And I was like, but it was like his hostility towards me, and so as like
because all of an assumption at this point in the conversation, did you even say anything of
nothing?
I want this band or nothing?
Nothing, because I never say that. I never say that.
Which, if you want to say it again, you could be very clear. You don't say your opinions on it.
I don't give my opinions. I mean, and like, do I again? I guess I did because we talked about assault weapons. I have an issue because I was on the receiving end of assault weapons. That changes my opinion. If you are, raped, you have an opinion about your safety with men who are big, overpowering, and domineering. I mean, that's what that is, right? But I don't give my opinion about whether I think they should or shouldn't be here because it does not matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters in the world. My opinion isn't the thing that's going to matter here, because that's not the fight I'm fighting anymore. I'm fighting to help people who are victims of gun violence.
And so you're not even necessarily fighting to help reduce gun violence. Your fight is specifically after it happens, helping the people heal after.
That's what not my fight. That's my purpose. That's what I get to do about what happened to me.
Get to do.
That's what I get to do about what happened to me, because I could not do nothing, and it took me a minute to find my space that I felt like I had the most to offer. And it's in healing. It's in healing and it's in hope. So anyway, at the end of that panel, the guy whose daughter, he apologized to me.
That's good.
And he said, I had no idea what you had been through. I had no idea who you were. And I said, maybe you should ask the question first. Because what I found is people don't ask me anything. They make assumptions and they make decisions about who I am, and not who I am based on anything I've said, based on the fact that I was in a mass shooting. I'm willing to be in the conversation, and I'm willing to be in a conversation with people about guns. But I'm willing to do it one-on-one, and I'm willing to have a conversation. And it takes a long time for people who are like super, super pro every type of gun to be able to de-escalate enough. To have a conversation with me to even hear what I'm saying. Because they make decisions about, and that's what it is. There's the conversation that's being had, and then there's the conversation that people think is being had. Right? And I always seem to be stuck in the conversation people decide I'm having, when I haven't even said anything that they believe that I think, and that was a real frustration for me.
Well, is there anything else you want to end with on, I guess, how to heal? Any last words? Yeah,
I think that life is uncomfortable, and I think that we live in a world that, by not having open conversations with two completely opposite sides that make us uncomfortable, that we're being conditioned to just be comfortable to the point of being numb. And I think that being uncomfortable is a part of existence, and I think that embracing discomfort, and like when it comes to trauma and it comes to walking through things that are really, really, really hard, that you can get to the other side, because I've done it over and over and over. And so I think that if there's anything I'm going to speak to, it's like, just be brave, be uncomfortable, like be willing to do the things, look at things. Like for me as a sober person to look at doing like psychedelic therapies took a lot of courage. But sometimes you have to move yourself out of what you think you have to do to give yourself a chance to be the person that you need to be. And I just encourage, like, open your mind to whatever conversation and investigate and do what you need to do. Because if I've been able to heal from where I was to where I am today, not only am I back being who I was, but I'm the best version of myself I've ever been because I did all the work and because I did all the therapy that I cleaned up my whole life. And now here I am in this position. I'm an artist. I'm a metal artist. I weld. I make modern industrial furniture. I'm going to give myself a shameless plug. And I'm doing all of these things, and I learned to weld at 50, a woman, because I could. And it turns out that I found the thing I probably was supposed to be doing my whole life, but I couldn't do it because I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and then I got so redirected by what I went through that I started making things to heal, which is also a part of my story. And then now I make modern industrial furniture. I sell it to people all over. These are the gifts of tragedy, and there's gifts in tragedy.
Yeah.
And
it's that ancient Chinese proverb of, the son and the farmer. Something bad happens. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know. Something good happens. Oh, congratulations. I don't know. And it just keeps going. Or there's good and bad in everything. The yin yang of it.
Yeah, we're being moved where we're supposed to go.
Yeah.
And so my feeling is like, if it's flowing, flow with it. And if you were hitting walls like I was before I went to Vegas, I wasn't listening about what I was supposed to do. And so I ended up in this catastrophic situation. And if I would have listened, it would have been less catastrophic, but I still don't know that I would have made the maneuvers I needed to be where I am in my life today. So it is what it is. And I'm in for the journey. It is what it is. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And lastly, what is this thing we've been standing behind?
So this is Kristen Smith Creates. I work in a welding space with other artists. I'm at the Reno Generator, and which is a maker space for practicing artists. So I'm a resident artist here, which means that I have my own personal space. I share it with Kristen Smith, who is a 28-year-old fabulous welder. She does really cool. I didn't have a lot of my pieces here, so we're showcasing Kristen. She does this. This is a clock she's making, and super talented. So if you're looking for really cool furniture and gates and art, we are your people.
Do you have a phone number, website, or anything else?
You can reach me, Heather Sallan, anytime. My company is Heather Sallan Designs, and I am on Instagram at Heather Sallan Designs. And
all of it.
Yeah, check it all out. I do leather work, I do metal, I do everything.
Yeah, alrighty. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks. All right.
What up, y'all? Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and slide on over to Amazon and check out my book, Behaving As Us. Add it to your cart, read it, and once you do, drop a review so it can help the Amazon algorithms too. All right, y'all. Peace.